October 17th, 11:42 p.m. A kitchen lit only by the refrigerator light. The hum is constant, low, mechanical, indifferent. A glass of water sits untouched on the counter. The condensation has stopped forming. The air feels still, too still. On the table, a phone screen glows with the final message. No new notifications, no typing bubble returning. You can almost hear the absence. Across the room, a chair is slightly pulled out as if someone just stood up. But no one is there, and that is when it happens, not the breakup itself, not the argument, not the slammed door. The split. From a Jungian perspective, separation does not only divide two lives, it fractures an inner structure that had quietly reorganized itself around another presence. An identity had formed, subtle, adaptive, alive in response to someone else's gaze. And now the gaze is gone. He stands at the sink, 38 years old. His name is Daniel Mercer, financial analyst, measured, rational, known among colleagues for composure. But tonight his reflection in the darkened window feels unfamiliar. The man looking back seems reduced. Not weaker, just less defined. Because with her, Claire, there was a different posture in his body, a softened jaw, a steadier breath. He spoke more slowly around her, laughed in a register his coworkers had never heard. That version of him existed only in that relational field. Now without it, something inside him is disoriented. People will tell him he misses her, that this is heartbreak, attachment withdrawal, routine disruption. But what he feels is stranger. He misses the man who knew how to hold her hand without thinking. He misses the voice that naturally lowered when she was tired. He misses the quiet courage he felt when she looked at him as if he was already enough. And here is the tension no one names. When a relationship ends, the mirror goes dark. And suddenly you are left asking, who was I really? From a Jungian lens, identity is not a fixed object. It is relational, dynamic. Certain aspects of the psyche only emerge in response to specific others. The softer self, the braver self, the part of you that risked vulnerability because it felt safe. When that container dissolves, those aspects do not immediately transfer. They go dormant. And dormancy feels like loss. Daniel walks to the living room. The indentation on the couch cushion is almost gone now. He notices it the way someone notices a fatting bruise. There is no dramatic collapse, no tears yet. Just a subtle dislocation. You know this feeling. The world continues exactly as it did yesterday. Traffic lights change, emails arrive. The clock moves forward, but internally something that once had shape has collapsed inward. He opens a drawer. Inside, a movie ticket from 3 years ago, a faded receipt from a cafe in Portland. Objects that once anchored memory now feel like artifacts from a country that no longer exists. But the ache is not in the objects. It is in the realization that the version of him who stood in that cafe, relaxed, playful, open, feels unreachable tonight. That man feels like a stranger. And this is where the psychological split deepens. Because grief in this form is not only directed outward, it curves inward. You begin to miss yourself. From a Jungian perspective, projection plays a silent role here. Often, we unconsciously project dormant qualities onto a partner, strength, warmth, vitality, but in healthy intimacy something else happens. Those qualities begin to awaken within us. The beloved becomes a mirror. And when the mirror disappears, we assume the qualities did too. Daniel leans against the wall, his breathing becomes shallow. There is a thought forming, slow, unsettling. What if the man she loved doesn't exist anymore? The refrigerator hum grows louder in the silence. This is the first layer of the split. You do not only lose them. You lose access to a version of yourself that only felt alive in their presence. And no one prepares you for that kind of disappearance. Outside, a car passes. Headlights sweep briefly across the ceiling, then vanish. For a moment, the room is illuminated, then dark again. Temporary light. Temporary clarity. Daniel closes his eyes. He tries to recall how he felt the first time she looked at him across that bookstore aisle, steady, chosen, seen. He can remember the scene. But he cannot fully access the sensation. That is what frightens him. Because if that feeling was real, if that self was real, where did it go? And if it can disappear once, What else inside him is only temporary. The clock reads 11:58 p.m. Midnight approaches, a new day. But he senses something else approaching too, a realization he does not yet want to name. That perhaps the relationship did not just end. Perhaps it exposed how fragmented his identity truly is. And perhaps the real grief is not about losing her. It is about discovering he does not yet know who he is without someone reflecting him back. The kitchen light flicks off. Darkness settles fully now. And in that darkness, the question begins to form, quiet, persistent, impossible to ignore. Who are you when no one is holding the mirror? January 3rd, 6:10 a.m. A commuter train moving north through winter fog. Daniel sits by the window, coat collar turned up, forehead resting lightly against the cold glass. Outside, telephone poles flick past in rhythmic intervals. The world looks muted, reduced to grayscale. Across from him, a couple sits shoulder to shoulder, not speaking, just sharing the same silence. He looks away. You can almost feel the subtle contraction in his chest, not sharp, not dramatic, just tight enough to remind him something is missing. But what exactly? From a Jungian perspective, relationships are not merely emotional attachments, they are psychological environments. Within them, certain archetypal energies awaken: the lover, the protector, the playful child, the wise companion. These are not masks, they are potentials. But potentials require context. Daniel notices something unsettling on that train ride. Around Claire, he used to initiate conversations with strangers. He used to suggest spontaneous detours. He once drove 3 hours at midnight just to watch meteor showers because she mentioned casually that she had never seen one. Now, he hesitates before ordering coffee. He rereads emails 3 times before sending. It is not that he became dependent. It is that a certain courage only emerged within that relational field. And without it, the courage retreats. This is the quiet truth many never articulate. You did not only love them. You loved who you were when you felt seen by them. The train slows, brakes screech lightly against metal. A woman steps aboard, shaking snow from her scarf. The air smells faintly of wet wool and engine grease. Daniel watches his own reflection in the window overlay the passing landscape. 2 images superimposed. This is how the psyche feels right now. Layered. Confused. From a Jungian lens, we construct parts of our identity in response to how we are mirrored. When someone consistently reflects your intelligence, you begin to embody it more fully. When someone delights in your humor expands. When someone feels safe with your vulnerability deepens. The mirror strengthens what it reflects. But when that mirror disappears, the psyche momentarily loses orientation. Daniel remembers a night in early autumn. Claire had looked at him across a crowded dinner table and said, almost absent-mindedly, "You're different with me, softer." He had laughed it off. But she was right. He was softer. Not because she changed him. Because she made space for a part of him that rarely surfaced. Now that softness feels exposed, unanchored. So he does what many do. He armors. At work, his voice sharpens again, his posture stiffens. He returns to being efficient, reliable, contained. Colleagues comment on how focused he seems lately. They mistake contraction for discipline. But internally, there is a low-grade grief humming beneath everything. The grief is not dramatic, it does not announce itself. It feels more like misplacing something important and not realizing until hours later. You walk through your day slightly incomplete. From a Jungian perspective, projection complicates this further. Sometimes we project unlived aspects of ourselves onto a partner, believing they possess qualities we secretly carry but have not owned. Strength, warmth, emotional fluency. When they leave, we assume those qualities leave too. Daniel catches himself thinking she was the brave one, she was the emotionally intelligent one. But that is not entirely true. She responded to his bravery. She engaged with his emotional depth. Those qualities did not originate in her. They were co-created in the space between them. And that space is what he truly misses. The in-between. The field. The atmosphere where certain parts of him felt natural. On the train, the couple across from him laughs quietly, a private joke, nothing extraordinary. But Daniel feels the echo. Because laughter shared in intimacy is different from laughter in isolation. It affirms existence. It says, I see that part of you, keep being that. Without that affirmation, parts of the self go quiet. Not dead. Just waiting. The train emerges briefly from fog into pale morning light. For a few seconds, everything sharpens, rooftops, trees, frost lining the tracks. Clarity. Then back into haze. Daniel closes his eyes. A realization is forming, subtle but undeniable. He is not grieving a person as much as he is grieving an identity configuration. The version of himself that felt emotionally expansive. The man who did not second-guess tenderness. The self that existed fluidly, without overanalysis. And here is the deeper discomfort. If that version required her presence to exist, was it ever truly his? Or was it only situational? This is where the psychological tension tightens. Because if parts of you only surface in relationship, then solitude becomes a confrontation. A test. Who are you when no one is activating your best qualities? Who are you when no one is reflecting your depth back to you? Daniel opens his eyes, the train approaches his stop. People begin standing, adjusting coats, preparing to exit. Movement resumes. He remains seated for a moment longer. Because beneath the routine of commuting, beneath the surface ache, a more unsettling question is taking shape. What if this grief is not asking him to find someone new, but to find a way to hold that mirror himself? And he does not yet know if that is possible. The train doors slide open with a mechanical hiss. Cold air rushes in. He stands, steps forward, and for the first time, the loss feels less like abandonment, and more like an unfinished psychological task. February 12th, 9:37 p.m. A gym nearly empty, fluorescent lights humming overhead. Daniel stands in front of the free weights, staring at his reflection in the wall-length mirror. Around him, machines click and reset with mechanical indifference. A television mounted in the corner runs a muted sports broadcast, players colliding in slow-motion replays. Impact without sound. He lifts the dumbbells, controlled, measured, 8 repetitions, 10, 12. His face remains expressionless. But inside, something feels rehearsed. You can sense when you are performing strength rather than inhabiting it. From a Jungian perspective, when a relational identity dissolves, the psyche often compensates. It reaches for a more rigid persona, a structured, socially acceptable mask that restores a sense of control. Strength replaces softness. Efficiency replaces openness. Composure replaces vulnerability. It feels safer this way. Daniel racks the weights, his breathing is steady, disciplined. He has always respected discipline, it gives edges to things, boundaries. But tonight, as he wipes his hands with a towel, a quiet recognition unsettles him. The version of himself he is inhabiting right now is not false. But it is incomplete. Because the softness that once existed so naturally, the version of him that would lean back on a couch and admit uncertainty without shame, has gone silent. Not destroyed. Silenced. And silence can be deceptive. It can feel like maturity. Like growth. Like moving on. But sometimes, silence is suppression wearing the costume of strength. He walks toward the locker room, the echo of his footsteps trails behind him. There was a night 6 months before the breakup when Claire had found him sitting on the balcony long after midnight. He had been quiet then too, thoughtful, distant. She sat beside him without asking questions. After a long pause, he spoke not about work, not about stress, but about fear, the quiet fear of being fundamentally misunderstood. He had never said that aloud to anyone before. She listened without interrupting. And something inside him unlocked. That was not weakness. That was integration. From a Jungian lens, when the psyche allows disowned material, fear, tenderness, longing into consciousness without judgment, it becomes whole, more grounded, less reactive. But integration requires safety. And safety in many cases is relational. Now alone in the locker room, Daniel stares at his reflection again, harsh lighting above, sharp angles, defined lines. He looks composed. Capable. But there is a subtle tightness around his eyes that wasn't there before. You've seen that look. The look of someone who has decided, quietly, not to need too much anymore. He showers quickly, water hits tile in rhythmic patterns, steam fills the small space. And here is where the deeper layer begins to surface. It is not only that he misses being softer. He fears that softness only existed because someone else validated it. Without validation, it feels risky, unstable. From a Jungian perspective, this is where the individuation process begins to press against comfort. Individuation is not about isolation. It is about reclaiming projected aspects of the self and integrating them internally. The courage he felt with her, the tenderness he accessed with her, the emotional fluency he embodied with her. These were not gifts she implanted in him. They were dormant potentials awakened by connection. And now the psyche faces a choice. Repress them, or internalize them. He turns off the shower, silence replaces the rush of water, for a moment the absence is loud. He realizes something as he dresses. The grief has shifted. It is no longer sharp. It is quieter. He no longer feels the desperate urge to text her. Instead, he feels something more uncomfortable. Responsibility. Responsibility for the parts of himself he once outsourced to the relationship. Because when someone consistently reflects your worth, you can postpone learning how to generate that reflection internally. When someone welcomes your vulnerability, you can delay practicing self-acceptance alone. When someone sees you clearly, you do not have to define yourself in solitude. But now there is no one sitting across the balcony. No one nodding in reassurance. No one softening at his admissions. Only him. And the mirror. He walks outside, the night air is colder than expected, streetlights cast long shadows across the pavement, cars pass intermittently. The city does not pause for inner transformations. But something subtle has begun. He does not want to lose that softer version permanently. He does not want to harden into a simplified identity just because it feels easier. And for the first time since October, a different question surfaces. What if that version of me was never meant to live only in relationship? What if it was waiting for me to claim it alone? The thought feels fragile, unsteady. Because claiming it means risking vulnerability without guaranteed reflection. It means speaking honestly even when no one is there to applaud it. It means holding his own gaze without flinching. He exhales slowly, visible breath in cold air. This is not dramatic transformation. It is quieter than that. It is the beginning of reclaiming something that never truly belonged to another person. But he does not yet know how to do it. And that uncertainty, that edge between grief and growth, is where he now stands. Alone. Not abandoned. Just unaccompanied. And the silence around him feels different tonight. Less like absence. More like invitation. Section 4, Learning to Hold the Mirror. March 21st, 5:48 a.m. The sky is just beginning to lighten. Daniel is awake before his alarm. The apartment is quiet in a way that no longer feels hostile. There is no refrigerator glow this time, no dramatic stillness, just the low murmur of early morning traffic beginning in the distance. He sits at the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, hands loosely clasped. No distraction. No performance. Just presence. For months, the question had circled him like a slow-moving storm. Who are you when no one is holding the mirror? This morning, he does not try to answer it intellectually. He tries something smaller. He pays attention. From a Jungian perspective, the process of individuation asks a difficult thing of us, to withdraw projections and reclaim the qualities we believed belonged to someone else. Not by force, not by imitation, but by conscious ownership. The courage he felt with her. The softness. The emotional clarity. These were not dependent traits. They were relationally activated traits. And activation can be learned. He stands and walks to the kitchen. The early light reveals details he once ignored: the grain of the wooden table, the faint scratch near the sink, the quiet order of objects left undisturbed overnight. There is something grounding about seeing things clearly. He makes coffee slowly, no phone in hand. Steam rises from the mug. He wraps both hands around it, feeling the warmth directly. Months ago, this would have felt heavy, this solitude, like evidence of absence. Today it feels like space. And space can be frightening or sacred. The difference is intention. He remembers the balcony night again, the confession of fear, the vulnerability, the way it felt to speak without armor. There is no one here to receive such a confession now. But that does not mean the confession cannot exist. He exhales. I am afraid of being unseen. The words land in the empty kitchen. They do not echo. They do not dissolve. They simply exist. Something shifts. From a Jungian lens, integration occurs when previously dependent aspects of the self are recognized as internal capacities. The psyche stabilizes not when it eliminates need, but when it can meet itself with the same attentiveness once sought externally. Daniel is not pretending he does not miss her. He does. But the missing feels different now. Less like craving. More like acknowledgement. He misses who he was with her, yes. But he is beginning to see that version as an early draft, not a lost artifact. He steps outside for a walk. The air is cool but no longer biting. The sky transitions from deep blue to pale gold. There is a couple ahead of him on the sidewalk, walking close together. He notices them and something surprising happens. There is no contraction. No sharp ache. Only a gentle awareness. Because what he once believed was exclusive to that relationship, the capacity for intimacy, warmth, softness, no longer feels locked behind it. It feels portable. Not because he has replaced her, but because he has begun to internalize the mirror. He walks past a storefront window and catches his reflection. For a moment, he studies it. The posture is relaxed. The jaw is not tight. The eyes are steady. He looks like himself, but fuller. From a Jungian perspective, this is the quiet milestone in individuation, when the qualities once dependent on external affirmation become self-sustaining, when you can access tenderness without someone inviting it, when you can embody courage without someone applauding it. He reaches the park entrance. Sunlight now filters through bare branches, casting long shadows across the path. He sits on a bench, closes his eyes, and there is no dramatic revelation. No cinematic breakthrough. Only a simple recognition. The man he was with her did not disappear. He was introduced. And introductions are not endings. They are beginnings. The grief that once felt like a void now feels like a teacher. It forced him to confront the fragmentation within his identity. It revealed how much of himself he had experienced only in reflection. And now, without resentment, without urgency, he understands something subtle but permanent. You do not miss them as much as you miss the version of yourself that felt expanded in their presence. But expansion was never theirs to own. It was yours to claim. The sky is fully bright now. Morning has arrived without ceremony. Daniel stands. He does not feel complete in some grand, final sense. He feels ongoing. And perhaps that is the point. Because the question, who are you when no one is holding the mirror, was never meant to have a fixed answer. It was meant to initiate a process. A lifelong conversation between the parts of you that awaken in love. And the self that must learn to sustain them in solitude. He walks forward into the light, not searching for a replacement reflection, but carrying his own.